Welcome everybody to our third session of the summer webinar series at Tallo. We are definitely excited to have you. So it's time to start thinking like all your favorite sports teams do, which means looking for talent earlier and building your people pipeline sooner to ensure that you will have a winning future. Join us for a series of sessions focused on how colleges and corporations can plan for a successful recruiting season and develop a solid early talent pipeline strategy. My name is Shay Tai, and I'm the Vice President of Engagement at Tallo. And joining me today is Eli Hall, the Mideast Georgia Admissions Counselor at Georgia Southern University. Georgia Southern University is a public research university in the U.S. state of Georgia. With more than 26,000 students in over 141 degree programs, which is incredible, by the way, its flagship campus being in Statesboro and other locations include the Armstrong campus in Savannah and Liberty campus in Hinesville. Our goal today here is to engage, interact, and most importantly, learn from Eli. We've got 20 minutes, and I have no doubt about it that it's going to go by real quick. So we encourage you to use the Q&A box so Eli can answer these questions live. And don't hold back, send over those questions. We want to make sure this is as valuable and impactful a conversation to help you with your own strategizing and planning. All right, let's welcome Eli to the conversation. And I'm going to share a bit about Eli before we get into it. Eli graduated from Georgia Southern University with a Bachelor of Science in Public Health. Their undergraduate experience working in the Office of Admissions as an orientation leader led them to discover their passion, love, and admiration for higher education. Eli is a part of the Enrollment Management Inclusive Excellence Committee and the Inclusive Excellence Huddle at Georgia Southern. In her free time, she enjoys spending time with friends, family, and her twin brother, which I think is a pretty cool detail. They're also an avid fan of Star Trek, longboarding around campus, which is also pretty cool, and also interacting with the student body on a daily basis. It's an honor to have you here, Eli. How you doing?
Shay, I'm doing so well. Thank you so much for that hearty introduction, if I do say so myself. I am doing well, and I am very excited to be on this platform with you and with Tallo and be a representation of Georgia Southern and really ready to get started with this.
Sweet. Well, Eli, it's an honor to have you here, and thank you so much for joining us. And we are definitely looking forward to learning from you today. And so we'll kick it off with an easy one, okay? I know we just gave an introduction into your role with Georgia Southern, but can you just again go over real quick your background with Georgia Southern University?
Yeah, so my background's a little different. When I was, in my high school years and I was looking for colleges and going on college tours, wasn't really finding that university that really spoke to me until my dad said, hey, yeah, you might want to check Georgia Southern. And when I got here, my life was changed, and obviously it's still changing, and I still love it because I'm still here. And so, like you said, I did my Bachelor of Science here at Georgia Southern with public health. And then in that time in my undergraduate career, I was able to work in a couple of different offices and with a couple of different organizations that really let me know that my passion does lie with working with students of all different types, walks of life, and different things like that, interacting with them, pouring into them. So I was in Student Government Association, Diversity Peer Educators, doing a lot out of our Office of Multicultural Affairs, and really just being involved and being a student that really just wanted to pour into others and had that passion, because I know what it was like to be a student that didn't have that resource, and wanted to be able to be seen at their university and institution that they loved.
And Eli, that's fantastic. And it really does sound vocational in a lot of ways. And we're super excited to get more into your efforts in diversity, equity, and inclusion, because that's something that holds very close to your heart. And we're all about recruitment and admissions and finding talent earlier. So when those two paths converge, I want to ask this: why is DEI such an important factor in college recruitment?
Right, Shay, yeah, that's a great question. We have to think about all of the students that we're interacting at any given point in time, and they're all coming from different walks of life. So whether that be different socioeconomic status, race, gender identity, sexual orientation, different types of expressions, cultures, and heritages, we want to make sure that any institution that is recruiting students, we're making them feel safe, and we're making them feel valued as a student at an institution. And so that just means that we're using tools that we have, whether it be me kind of creating and facilitating my inclusive language presentation, where I'm able to say, hey, there's a lack of inclusive language in college admissions, and here's why we need to talk about it, and here's why it matters. Because when we talk about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, we have to understand that it's not just a string of words put together that sounds really nice, right?
Right.
It's an action word. And so we have to continuously keep working towards that. It's an ongoing collaborative effort from everyone. And I know that this phrase has been tossed around a lot in higher education and just admissions in general, but it's kind of everyone's job to contribute to enrollment and recruitment. And that directly leads to yield efforts and retention as well. So all of that is important. And so when we're talking about DEI efforts, we're also talking about the changing and shifts in student populations, right? So we know that a lot of higher education data says that we're not going to be having the bread and butter students that we've been recruiting since before. And then in 2026, those students are going to go away. And so we need to think about how we can recruit them. And then also what the institution's definition of diversity is, right? Diversity isn't just race or ethnicity or religion. It's about student type. So are we working with transfer students or the military personnel? Do we have accommodations for students that have different learning abilities or physical abilities in that way? So really kind of putting the full picture together and making sure that our resources and support systems are there as well.
That is really cool. That last piece you said with the expansion of that DEI definition, right? Where it's like the, ex-military, they're coming back into civilian life looking to further their education, maybe with the GI Bill or something like that. Or people with disabilities and handicaps and other things like that. I mean, it's really cool to hear, like, when we say inclusive, we really do mean it. And so that's really great to hear, Eli. And, it also leads into our next question. It talks about strategy. Especially when it comes to recruiting for undergrad and particularly GSU. My question is this: what strategies does GSU follow to achieve their DEI goals in terms of undergraduate recruitment?
Right, that's a fantastic question. And I think one of the strategies was one that we were not expecting, right? When we talk about COVID and we look at how that really kind of changed higher education as a whole at that given point, we had to shut down. We had to close our doors and walk away from the students that we know and love and we're supporting and servicing. And so we had to build up that virtual access, right? And so building out those virtual platforms and creating that flexibility and that access for students that with that physical barrier is now eliminated. And so that's one of the strategies that I know Georgia Southern has been really, really great at and keeping up with. Because I know other institutions have said, okay, we don't need this virtual platform anymore. But that's not the case, and that's not being accessible to students who can't get physically to us, or in the instance of utilizing office data as well. So using that strategy, institutional research. Does your university or institution have that? How are you using that data to create policies and programs? And how are these feeding into our institution, and how are we servicing our students that way? A lot of strategies that we use also include data, but not data driven, but more so data informed. I would like to say that I'm data informed because even though we can look at all of the wonderful quantitative data, we have to look at what students are experiencing. What point of life are they at? Are they ready for college? Do they need an extra year? How much student support services do we need to have with our institution? So different things like that. And of course, strategies, the last, but certainly not least, and probably arguably one of the most important, is cross-campus collaboration and even external collaboration. We need to talk to each other. We need to collaborate. So whether that be with the Office of Institutional Research or Inclusive Excellence or the Office of Multicultural Affairs, how we're servicing our students is directly impacted from how we talk to each other and collaborate and create these different events, programs, and printed media material.
No, and all that's great and good, and it definitely is part of an overall strategy, which we're definitely digging, and we're happy to serve you in some capacity in those things, especially having that digital footprint for Georgia Southern. So it's really cool to hear that that's a main part of your strategy.
Absolutely, and it's really important because we all know that we are going to be competing for the same students, not within Georgia, but nationally and even globally when we're talking about our international student population. So it's not just a term of, do we want to be inclusive? It's, Are you going to be inclusive? Yes or no? And if it's no, then you're probably not going to be recruiting the students that you need and want to keep your institution above water. And I think that's really important for all institutions to understand. As a recruiter, I'm going out in the field and talking to these students, and the first question that usually flies out of their mouth is, what's your campus life like? What's your diversity like? And if we as admissions staff, higher education staff, and professionals, if we do not know how to have that conversation and talk to them and be honest and transparent about what we have and what we offer, then we are doing those students a disservice if we can't even talk about it. And that's verbally, orally, and written.
Absolutely. Well, hey, there's something else I'd like to dig in. We're gonna get a little bit deeper into some things that you brought up when we first had a conversation, Eli. There are two things that really thought were super interesting and compelling, and we wanted to talk about. And that was, you were talking about tips and insights to consider when recruiting, what to think about. Two things that really rang a bell with us was the 4 Ps and a brave versus safe space. So would you mind going over each one of those individually, please?
Yeah. So when we're thinking about strategies and how we can recruit these students, especially under that DEI lens, we have to think about the 4 Ps. And I was able to go to a conference and be able to be a part of the anti-racist education. And so the speaker got up and he did a very awesome presentation, and that's where I got those 4 Ps from. So did want to give credit where credit is due. But the 4 Ps is, what are our people? Right? So we're evaluating our people, we're evaluating our programs, we're looking at our policy, and then we're also looking at our purpose. And so when we looking at all of those together, we can kind of see where we are and where we need to go forward, and some things that we can change, modify, or even just completely redact and get rid of. And I think that's really important, because do the people look like the general population of your institution? Not only faculty and staff, but do your leadership look like the general population? Are our programs reflective of what our students need? Do we have those resources in place? Are these programs effective? And if not, how can we use data and both quantitative and qualitative data to help that? Policy. Who is making the policy? So getting right back to people. And then how is that policy affecting our students? And do they have services available to them? And finally, last but not least, evaluating that purpose, your institutional purpose. What is the common goal? And when you can solidify that common institutional purpose and that goal, everyone knows what they need to work towards. And that is just going to increase those recruitment efforts and letting the students know that everyone is working together to service them, because we, at the end of the day, want you.
Yeah, those 4 Ps are such a nice holistic kind of acronym, so to speak, to really remember, like that, hey, as a whole, how can we improve not just DEI efforts, but efforts all around? I mean, those 4 things can definitely drive the data informed type strategy you all implement there. So it's really cool to see how one connects the other. So that's really cool. I'm glad you touched on the 4 Ps. I hope our audience got a lot out of that. I know I did. Can you touch a bit more on that brave space versus safe space? Because that was a unique concept that I had heard for the first time.
Right.
And maybe a few other people have never heard of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really love talking about this concept of the difference between a safe and brave space, because like you said, Shay, I was probably the only person that really kind of brought that up. And so while I love the idea of a safe space, right, getting together in a common room and being able to discuss some harder topics or more polarizing topics in a room and be able to share that, that's all good and well, but I want people to be in brave spaces. I want people to be brave enough to raise their hand and say, hey, I actually think I said something. Is this offensive? Or, hey, I actually think what this student said was problematic, etc. How can we talk about this? Now, granted, this is a challenge by choice type situation, right? But that brave space creates that environment where you can ask questions and not be judged and be educated. So instead of calling people out, we're bringing them in, we're calling them in. And that is really, really important, because we're not going to change if we don't talk to each other and if we don't see each other's different perspectives with respect and empathy. And
I
so
love
that is
that.
the main difference, is to be brave, and to speak up and to use your voice and to really ask those questions. And while it is a challenge by choice, for all the people that are watching this, I highly encourage you to take that challenge, to open that door when it knocks.
Yeah, I really thank you for elaborating on that. Again, I thought that was such a unique piece of insight that you shared when we first met a few weeks ago. So getting back into the recruiting environment, right? So we're here
Mhm.
to talk about early talent and how to tap into that population. And it's a tough go around, especially in the college space. So we're all experiencing challenges, and we would love to learn more about if there's any unique challenges that you're facing in today's environment, and if you do have any, what are you doing to solve these challenges?
Right. I think what anybody would say in higher education is the shift of populations of students, right? We're not used to this big shift and we're aware of it, but what's really going to matter is how proactive we are with that shift. So are we targeting the students that we need to recruit in order to make our numbers? Are we making sure that the students that we were recruiting are still getting service? Different things like that. And when we're thinking about recruiting different student population types, we also have to think about how that's going to change, the institution as a whole. So I like to talk about this in the sense of operational hours. If we have a non-traditional student, they might have a family, they might have kids. What if they get off work at 5 like the rest of us, and they're calling the admissions office for some extra additional information or some help, and we're not open? So let's say we extend our hours to 6 and 7 in the admissions office. Doesn't really do that student justice if they have a financial aid question and financial aid is closed. So we need
Right.
to think of operational hours, and the whole institution needs to be together on that. And I know I bring that up and people are like, oh, I don't want to work after 5, but I do believe in, one, we need to do it because we need to service these students because this is what they need and we need to provide those resources. But two, we also have to start getting comfortable with being uncomfortable,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to those challenges and how we can change them. Another challenge that we see is just a university and institution being transparent and honest about the resources that they can provide. You do not want to recruit a student and then not have the services to support them. And so even though that can be a tougher conversation, having that conversation and being honest and open about that is going to be really important. So we're recruiting the students, but not only recruiting them, but we're retaining them because
Right.
they have those student support services in place to be academically successful and go on into the world and have amazing, fantastic careers.
Man, that's key. And I love the very end of that, where it's like, hey, it's all about after they leave Georgia Southern, like giving them the foundation to be successful and to enjoy doing what they're doing and have the confidence and learn from the brave space that they were involved in and take that and extrapolate that to others. So, no, Eli, again, like great stuff. I do want to circle back to the brave space because we have a lot of questions about that.
Yeah.
And everyone really likes the idea. The first question is from one of our attendees, and is how would you recommend articulating a brave space to incoming students?
Yeah, I would formulate it in the sense of it's a challenge by choice. I always tell students, we don't know how to help you if you don't say anything. So really asking for help. That's a part of being a brave space, is just asking for help first and foremost. And when you ask for help, you're getting those connections, you're meeting people, you're investing in your social capital. So all it takes is for you to speak up and ask questions, but also open yourself up, have an open mind and an open heart, because there are things, we all know that that transition from K through 12 to higher education can be a lot for some students. So making sure that they have open hearts and open minds and really soaking up that college environment and
Mhm.
using it to the fullest. And that is what a brave space is. You being in an uncomfortable environment and working towards getting comfortable, then working towards being great, and then working towards being absolutely awesome.
Cool. And would you recommend kind of a similar tactic to get faculty and staff to participate and encouraging them to kind of work on this kind of space for students?
I think that's a little bit different. I think you need to have the correct people. And so let's say if you don't have the correct people, do you know of any external resources or other offices on campus that can facilitate that type of conversation, right? Are there people in your institution that are trained to handle those conversations and facilitate that? So that's a little bit different, because when we're talking about faculty and staff in diversity, equity, inclusion, if the faculty and staff aren't diverse and equitable and inclusive to our students are not going to come. And then we're going to lose faculty and staff as well. So we have to think about retention both on the student side and the professional side with faculty and staff. And I do think it takes the proper person, not proper person, but the right person to facilitate that conversation. But also it takes the willingness of an office and the leadership to inspire others to do that challenge by choice and be brave. So maybe it's you're in a group of people and your supervisor starts off the conversation to make everyone more comfortable. Or maybe if that space, you don't want that supervisor or leadership in, you make your own focus groups and talk to each other, and then come back, write down your ideas, and bring that to the table. So it is a little bit different when we're discussing students versus faculty and staff, but the same kind of outcome is being brave and expressing your thoughts and feelings so we can meet you where you are, because DEI, everyone is on their own journey. And so my biggest thing with DEI is we have to meet you where you are, and then also deliver that news and acceptance and constructive criticism and empathy with grace.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I appreciate you elaborating on that a little bit. Hey, time flies when you're having a great conversation. Okay,
it sure does.
I know we're a bit over. I think we have time. For those of you who have to go, trust me, we're recording this that we'll be able to share with you after the fact. You can see this, but I do want to ask one more question. I want to squeak it in. Okay, so
Please.
The question is this: how are organizations like Tallo rising to the challenge of providing a more equitable and inclusive place for students? If you feel so compelled, you can grade us.
Ooh, wow, not a grade. Okay. We'll start with the first part of that, Shay. But Tallo does a really good job, because if you think about it, you are the foundation that we can use. So you already built that platform. And it's fantastic that Tallo has both virtual webinars during the summer. You have college fairs and different other resources and data collection points that other universities and institutions can come to you and say, hey, can you build this out? Here's our data. We want you to make this digestible so we can use it to formulate our policy and look at our people and evaluate our purpose. All of those 4 Ps come back. And so it's really, really awesome to have that opportunity. And Tallo does, I think, a really good job. And it really all started randomly at a conference, talking to someone, Paul, actually, from Tallo. So I would give you a hard 8 out of 10. Very, very awesome. I appreciate it a lot.
Eli, that means a lot coming from you, so we appreciate that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No.
So, anyway, hey everyone, it looks like we're a little over time, but thank you so much, Eli, for sharing all your wonderful insight and guidance today. And thank you everyone who joined us in the conversation. I'm really pumped up about everything, and I hope you all are too. So we have some information now on the screen for contacts if you want to reach out to Eli Hall. And if you have any questions after the webinar, feel free to reach out to her. Also, make sure to sign up and join us for our next section on July 14th, where we're going to hear from Richard Barkowski at the Construction Association of Western Pennsylvania and Ali Chernick at Mascaro. It's a wonderful workforce development initiative. And Tallo plays in the college space, the corporate space. We also work in workforce development. So we're going to talk a little bit about that on July 14th. So hope you join us then. Thank you again, Eli, and thank you all for joining us. Have a great week.
Thanks, Shay.
You're welcome. See you later.
See ya.